next presenter to take the stage, please. Ryan Sprague is an author and podcaster. What you're going to say is going to be quite mind-bending. It is for me.
Hi, my name is Ryan Sprague, as Bill mentioned. I host a podcast called Somewhere in the Skies about UFOs. I've been hosting the podcast for almost a decade now at this point. I remember when I first started it, I didn't think I'd make it past 5 episodes. We're now up to about 450, and it's been a wild ride from there. I've authored 3 books on the subject of UFOs, 2 of which are currently being taught in universities in the United States. I often go on television shows, Ancient Aliens, Mysteries Decoded, things like this, to try to lend credibility to this often ridiculed topic of UFOs. Before I kind of start my talk, I'd love to know from you guys, how many people here have seen or believe they've seen something in the sky they cannot explain? That's awesome. Okay. All right. That went well. I was a little nervous. So, when it comes to what I call my ufology, as it were, I'm not a scientist. I'm very happy that we have the scientists here to show you what is possible out there. And that lends credibility to the work that I do, and that is dealing with people. When I'm not doing UFOs, as I call it, I am a playwright. I spent over a decade in New York City. My plays have been produced all over the world. And when I first became a playwright, the first thing you learn is that your characters in your play, it must be one of the most pivotal moments in their life. Otherwise, why are we watching this? And that often comes with some sort of change in aftermath for this person to be fundamentally changed. And that's what I wanted to do when it came to UFOs. I'm not here to convince anyone that aliens are real. I'm not here to even say that UFOs are directly connected to extraterrestrials. I'm here to show you, like many of you in this room, that everyday people are seeing things they cannot explain in our skies, and it is greatly impacting their lives. So I often look at these individuals almost as a character would, as a playwright would look at a character. This can be a pivotal moment and life-changing experience for many people out there. Now, I have traveled the world interviewing countless people about their UFO experiences, and while I sought to find patterns in this, it was pretty interesting what I did find, and that's that this thing, whatever UFOs are, a million different possibilities for them, it does change people. And that ultimately would become what I talk about in my books. So today I'm going to take a human approach to the UFO phenomenon for you. And that began with me. I actually had a personal UFO sighting in 1995 in central New York in the US with my father. I was not alone. I was fishing off of a dock, and I looked up into the night sky, and this is what I saw. It was 3 perfect equilateral lights in a triangular formation with a red light in the middle. It was massive, it was low, it was completely silent, and I don't know what it was. I yelled for my father to come outside where we were staying at our camp at the time, and he did witness this with me. And we both watched as this craft, I did not see a structured machine, but it was a perfect triangle, and I could not see the stars behind it. Neither could my father. So we did believe this was some sort of structured craft, completely silent. We both knew this was not a conventional aircraft by any stretch. And it just hovered silently over the St. Lawrence River in New York and disappeared on the other side of the river, which is the border between the US and Canada. I don't know what it was. I'll never know what it was, but it dramatically affected my life. I was a baseball player, thought I was going to go pro. Instead, I became a ufologist. to my father's dismay, I think. But that's a story for another time. He's come around since. But yeah, this changed the entire course of my life. It has brought me to this room right now. And ultimately, it also would correlate to hundreds and hundreds of people that I've interviewed throughout the 8 years of my podcast and in my books, Somewhere in the Skies. So this is just a small example of some of the individuals that I have spoken to who had their lives dramatically changed by a UFO encounter. So what I'm going to do is share a few of these with you guys today, and you're going to hear directly from these individuals about how these events seemingly changed their lives. So the first person I'm going to introduce you to is Kieran Woodhouse. Kieran was a warehouse manager for a medical equipment company, and he and his brother Cameron were from Houseowen in the West Midlands in England. And on April 10th, 2013, he and his brother were leaving a rugby practice that they were at. And on the way home, they saw a small pinpoint of light in the sky, and it was running parallel to their vehicle as they were going down the road. And as they kept driving, this thing would follow them. If they slowed down, this point of light would slow down. If they stopped, this point of light would stop. And as they drove on, the object came closer and closer to their vehicle. And what they eventually would see is what you see up here. It was a perfect black triangle, almost identical to what I saw in 1995. What fascinated me most about this case, actually, was not so much the UFO itself, and that's going to be kind of a running pattern here. It's not the UFO I find most intriguing, it's the way that it impacts the individual, the observer of said UFO. There we go. That's our buddy, Kieran. He would end up telling me about this event when he and his brother saw this black triangle. I should point out that my brother and I were absolutely petrified. We were visibly shaking and both crying. It's something I'm not ashamed to admit, but at the same time, something I can't explain. There was no reason for us to have been crying in this moment, but we were all the same. So this really, as a playwright, a dramatist, caught my attention that looking up at this UFO while scared, I'm sure excited, adrenaline, they both just immediately started crying and becoming emotional looking at this thing. Not the first, I think, reaction that many would have when seeing one of these. So I found that very interesting. So now what I'm going to do, and again, this will be repeated for a few of these other people, you're going to hear straight from Kieran about how this affected him and what he took from this experience and how he integrated it into his life.
So during the actual sighting, my brother and I both started crying. We weren't necessarily scared, but we were dealing with something that we didn't know and at the time didn't really understand. So for us, we're both the type of people that if we can deal with an external threat, then we understand what it is and we can deal with it. But something like this, we didn't know what it was. And the silence of the object was petrifying. That was scary, but that this object could be so close, so big, yet so silent. So we sat there for the few minutes and cried. And eventually, when this thing disappeared, we started the car back up and headed home. And we told our parents. We were both living with our parents at the time. And I think if it was just me, then they maybe wouldn't have believed me as much. But because my brother, who isn't really into this kind of thing and doesn't really research this kind of thing, he backed me up, and I think that added a little bit of credibility to what we were saying. So since then we haven't really spoken about it really. Like I say, my brother's not really into that kind of thing. I've continued to research the paranormal and UFOs. So we do talk about that side of things, but not really about our shared experience. I've never said that this thing was aliens, because I don't know, and it could have been military, it could have been anything, but I can't for sure say that it's extraterrestrial. And I guess really, if I had to have an opinion on what these things are, the UFO subjects as a whole, I believe that they're interdimensional beings and they're operating on frequencies outside of our perceptive range. And we can tune into these frequencies by chance, or some people can do it as and when they wish. And when we tune into these frequencies, we see these paranormal entities, be they spirits, UFOs, Bigfoot, and anything like that, really. So yeah, that's it. That's our experience. It's how it made us feel. It's what it's done to me. And I guess really, if anybody has a UFO sighting, they should speak out about it, and they shouldn't feel afraid to talk about it. Although there is a stigma associated with it, and people feel that they're gonna they might lose their career, or they might be mocked for what they've seen. But I think the world is changing now. The news is beginning to talk more about it, and it's becoming more mainstream. So I think there's never been a better opportunity for people to be able to talk about what they've seen and their experiences. And the support is out there, particularly through people like Ryan, who is great with this kind of thing. So if you have seen anything, then do report it.
All right. Now, I dramatically underestimated how long these would each take, guys. So I'm going to skip to one of the more sensational cases for you, give you a little taste of that. And we had a case in Germany here. I am unfortunately going to have to get to this one for you, but all of these cases can be found in my books, which are available at the VIP meeting after this as well. Sorry, I had to do a little plug there. This is Scott Santa. He's a retired Coast Guard and United States Postal Worker. In the summer of 1974 in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, at a drive-in movie theater, he and his buddy were getting ready to watch a movie. The entire parking lot was full of cars. All the lights, these big floodlights were on in the parking lot there. The movie was going to start any minute. And then all of a sudden, all of the lights in this drive-in movie theater went down completely. People tried turning on their headlights on their vehicles, and nobody's cars would start. We are seemingly talking about dozens and dozens of vehicles. And all of a sudden, from out of the forest, which was behind the big movie screen, Scott and allegedly hundreds of other people saw this. The anticipation.
Working.
There we go. They saw this massive chevron/boomerang shaped craft hovering over the drive-in movie theater. This thing floated over the parking lot of the area. Again, nobody's cars would start. All of their engines had seemingly failed at the same time. And once this object went over the parking lot area, it disappeared out of sight. All the lights come back on. People's vehicles start. So you would think at this point, people would feel scared, threatened, maybe start leaving the drive-in movie theater or something. No, not a single person left. Scott got out of his car, went to the restroom area of the drive-in, waited in line with other people, and nobody was talking about what had just been seen over this parking lot. He got back to his vehicle, the movie started, they watched the entire thing, and they went home. But not a single person there talked about what had just happened. So I don't know what that means. With a lot of these cases I've come across, there is this almost instant amnesia that happens to a UFO witness, where they see something and then it just is gone out of their mind. This would lead to some problems for Scott, actually. He would eventually become very isolated in his life. He was the only one who would eventually remember this happening After seeing a craft like this on the front of a UFO book, he felt triggered and all the memories started coming back to him, but he could not find anyone else in his town who remembered this happening. He couldn't find his friend who had been with him that night and saw this thing either. And he thought he was crazy. He thought he was crazy. He became very depressed, very alienated, forgive the pun, and it took a big toll on him. He didn't think anyone would ever come forward and say, this happened. You know, I looked in the local newspapers, nothing from the time period when this thing happened either. And then my first book came out. And soon after that, I had somebody reach out to me and tell me, I'm going to try to get to the letter here as I close things up.
Is that not working?
It's probably me, Bill. There we go. I had this letter come to me. I read your book during a camping trip last month, and I almost dropped it after reading the story about the man at the drive-in theater. I grew up in Summit County, not too far from the drive-in. I remember one night in the summer I was in the backyard smoking a cigarette with my sister, and I swear to you, we looked up and saw exactly an object that looked like what the man in your book described. It was very big, pitch black. My sister freaked out and ran inside, but I watched it until it went out of sight. The only difference from what the man saw was that we could see a few white lights on each end of the thing, pointing down at the ground. The light beams were going in motion like they were searching for something. We thought maybe it was some sort of blimp or a helicopter, but it had no propellers and was silent. I remember it to this day, but when I talked to my sister, she denies it ever happened, which I found interesting. Maybe she didn't remember it happening. But I remember it to this day. Anyway, I thought I'd share this with you because it was so close to where he saw this and where we saw what we did. I know it was the same year because my sister graduated high school that year. Again, she denies we saw it, or she just doesn't remember it, like the man in the book. Either way, if he wants to talk to me about it, you can give him my email. Just wanted to know, I think I saw the same thing. These two are inseparable at this point. They talk constantly, and this response was enough vindication for him. So, if I did anything, I didn't prove aliens existed, but I made this one guy know that he was not alone, possibly searching for something to prove we are not alone. So yeah, I have many other cases, guys, but again, I usually give like an hour lecture, and I putting this down to 15 minutes. So it was rough for me, but I appreciate your time. The last thing I'll put here for you. Oh, that's a good case. It's in the book. These are the words that stuck out to me in my research. Awe, wondering, insignificant, vulnerable, exposed. Mind-blowing, love, grateful, amazed, thankful, burning curiosity, trying to make sense of the world, vindication, and the last one, meaning. I think this topic, more than anything, when you brush up against it, when you possibly have a UFO sighting, or whether you're just curious, it gives you a sense of meaning. I don't know what UFOs are. I don't know what UFOs aren't. The United States has admitted they are real, but there's a million questions that come after that. The UK is not too far behind. Many other countries are now officially investigating UAP or UFOs from a military standpoint. But I do want to show that for every one of those military encounters that you come across on the news, there are hundreds of people just like you, just like me, who are seeing these things, can't explain it, and are fundamentally changed by it. People who saw a UFO and never had any artistic abilities can now play a guitar out of nowhere, can now make the most geometrically sound art, having no art abilities before that. These are just a small example of what I've come across in my research, but again, I think these words are something I'd love for you to keep in mind as we kind of continue probing this topic tonight with you guys. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be available later on to talk. But thank you for letting me go a little longer.
I think one of the things I've taken away from your talk there is about stigmatization.
Yes.
The idea that an individual feels uncomfortable about discussing their experience for risk of creating a negative view of themselves. Just explain to me, in terms of the people you spoke to, and that's many people, once you've spoken to them, what is that person's experience? What is that situation? Is it relief? Is it comfort? What's going on?
So, my partner's gonna love this. I spent many days of my life never admitting I had a UFO sighting. I lost many second dates after saying that I was a UFO researcher. I finally have someone who understands me and supports the work that I do. But it's different for every person, to be honest. But I will say, in the past 8 to 10 years now, now that this topic has gone more mainstream and it's more widely accepted, things have changed. People are willing to talk about these things. And just by the sheer example of how many people raised their hands here tonight, that's more than 10 years ago. Nobody was admitting. So I think the stigma and ridicule is shedding. And I think it's very important to show that everyday people are having these experiences. I don't know what it is, but it is changing people in many different ways. Whether that has to do with the UFO itself or not, I don't know. But I always come back to this topic is more about us than it is what the UFO is. And I do believe that if it is alien, if it is something non-human, it is a mirror looking back at us as human beings.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Very enlightening.